mind. It's connecting. And as soon as he picks up. All right, welcome, caller.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, TFM. I've been a long fan of the show ever since I came across you about last year.
Thank you.
And I suppose one question that's been on my mind for a while now is a lot of MGTOW and red pill people, they constantly say that the media has greatly exaggerated the whole concept of love. And I don't know if that's necessarily them talking about the experience that one is supposed to have through the supposed love, or if the image that Hollywood has given us is in itself an entire lie. Is this thing that we call love merely both men and women exacting on their roles, and as time has moved on and we've distanced ourselves from that, we've lost sight and thought it was something else? I was hoping you could elaborate on that.
Well, okay, so there's a limitation of the English language where we have the word love, whereas in Greek, for example, they had like 5 different words to describe different types of love. So you could describe the love of family, the love between a man and a woman, like romantic love. There was the love of God. There was all kinds of different types of love. But because English is very limited, we only have this one word. It actually makes communication harder, because if for example, if I say, women don't love men, obviously there's a version of love that women have. You can argue, okay, that women do love men in their own way, but I'm referring to the kind of love that men want from a woman, the kind, like the romantic, loyal, selfless kind of love that songs are written about. That women don't really have that. They might have it for their children to some degree, but not for men. So it is what it is. Now, does that mean love doesn't exist? Well, no. There's different kinds of love. It's a limitation of language. So parents love their children, mothers love their kids, the fathers love their kids. Obviously, they don't love their kids. And this is easy. I mean, if I say I love chocolate, and I love my family, and I love women, and I love, whatever. I love pushing people's eyeballs in with my thumbs. Those are all different kinds of things. Clearly, I'm not talking about the same type of emotion when I'm describing all these different categories. So we have a limitation of language that's affecting things, but we also need to be cognizant of the fact that men and women, love itself, romantic love specifically, is a product of the reproductive role and instinct. So what men experience as love towards women is based on the male reproductive role, and what women experience as love towards men is a product of the female reproductive role. And this is confirmed if you look at oxytocin versus vasopressin. The behaviors that are caused by vasopressin, which is the male love hormone, causes male love behaviors such as mate guarding and so forth, whereas oxytocin, which is the female love hormone, causes female love behaviors, which is like cuddling, intimacy, peace, stuff like that. So women have a form of love, men have a form of love, but the fact that we use one word to describe all of it just causes confusion. So maybe we need more words.
And that's for the constant claim that the portrayal of love in modern media is an exaggeration that leads people towards disappointment.
I don't know about the media. I don't know about.
Do you mind if I step in here?
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
So here's the thing, and I say this after having, 2 relatively long-term relationships, i.e., 2 marriages. The media's portrayal of love and happiness is disingenuous at best, because there's going to be times in a long-term relationship, even a healthy long-term relationship, where that emotion is going to ebb and flow. And so the problem that the media, or the problem with the media's portrayal of this idea of love, is that it is completely unrealistic, and it basically tells men that they should simp for women who are not worth their time. And that's an issue. So the idea is that the women are the prize, the men have to do all the work, and when the women fuck up, for some reason, it's the man's fault. I mean, that right there is the plot of every romantic comedy that's out there. So when it comes to this idea of the media portrayal of love, what they forget is that women are no longer the prize, And if women are unwilling to invest in the relationship at the same level and reciprocate that the man is, that relationship will fail. And, this idea that men should be walking on eggshells to please women all the time, on a good day in 2018, that's bullshit. Relationships are like a garden, and both parties need to invest, or weeds grow in their place instead of the healthy relationship that they should have. And that's, in a best case scenario. But the problem that you have in this day and age with the media's portrayal of love and this long-term relationship thing and everything else is that the media goes out of its way to incentivize women to destroy their relationships. So let's say a man communicates in a certain way. Maybe he's a blue collar worker. He works a construction job and he communicates a certain way with his coworkers. Maybe he was on a football team, or maybe he was on a sports team prior to that, and he communicated another certain way with his teammates there. Well, when he gets into that romantic relationship with this woman, he's going to communicate in the ways that he knows. And because of the way the feminist indoctrination is gone, what they are going to do is they're going to say, no. He's not communicating with you incorrectly. He just thinks you're a piece of shit because he's a patriarchal piece of shit. And this is an internal flaw. It's unforgivable, and you should dump him. And so it places all these unrealistic expectations on men while incentivizing women to destroy the relationships in the trade. So that whole the reality is that while the relationships are going to ebb and flow and there's going to be challenges, it's never going to be the whole media portrayal of, oh, everybody's happy and everything's fine and we never argue and this and that. Let me tell you something. If you're in a long-term relationship and you never argue, one or the other of you is using the other one, because that's not a real relationship. Because the relationship at some level, if you're honest with each other, you're going to have some inherent disagreements that are going to have to be worked out. And in what is left of healthy relationships that are still out there, and those are becoming more and more rare by the day. But that said, yeah, I mean, the way the media portrays love and emotion and everything else, it is completely unrealistic, and in many cases unattainable. The only time that people feel that level of love is when they first orgasm inside the woman and they're like, wow, that was amazing, because they're in the honeymoon phase.
Right. I think honestly it's less that there's like an insidious agenda to poison people, but it's more of they're pandering, especially for romantic comedies. The audience is women. So the stories women want to hear, the lies women want to be told, is basically how love is portrayed in these movies. It's more about the female fantasy and projection than some sort of insidious agenda. Women, like the best example I could think of is women are never the protagonist of the story. They're the MacGuffin. They want the story to happen around them and be about them, but they don't want to actually be the active participant in their story. This is why, like, Mary Sue characters are so boring, because they're always side characters in their own story. Like, you look at fucking Rogue One. The main character, Jen Erso, she didn't do shit. She was like a side character. There was no... Who is the main character of Rogue One? I have no fucking idea. There was no main character. We were sans a main character in Rogue One. And so you look at the new Star Wars, okay, sorry. Yeah, anyway, so if you have you have no character, you have no protagonist because they want to put a woman in it, but women can't be the main character because they don't want to be the main character. The female power fantasy is to be the MacGuffin that the men fight for, but because women don't want responsibility. Being the protagonist, being an active participant in your own story requires you to take responsibility, which women don't want. They want the men to do everything around them and for them and to them, while they're just the focus of the attention. They just want the attention. They don't want the responsibility. So it's just, that's the unrealism. That's where the unrealism, that's not a word. That's where the lack of realism comes in. It's pandering to the female fantasy. Because what's the male fantasy? The male fantasy is porn. Now, porn is just as unrealistic. You know, if you think you're going to be a pizza guy and you're going to walk into an orgy and get fucked by 5 beautiful women at once, I got bad news for you. That's not going to fucking happen. So porn is
shit.
I know. Look, we all work those pizza nights expecting things to happen that never happen. But, you know, porn is the male power fantasy.
Supposed to happen? Fuck.
Well, the male power fantasy is porn, which is unrealistic. The female power fantasy is romantic movies, which is unrealistic. But the thing is the female power fantasy is mainstream. So women actually think it's realistic because they see it all the time. It's advertised in their face. Porn, it's not like illegal, but it's frowned upon in society. You can't like walk around looking at porn in public, or you might get charged with a crime. If you talk about porn, well, yeah, you could have like your dildo in your purse and no one will care. But yeah, there's a lot of shame about male sexuality. So a man's power fantasy is like something that he needs to be ashamed of and not talk about, whereas a woman's power fantasy is promoted in society because of gynocentrism. So that's really what this is about. It's ultimately boils down to gynocentrism. The female, because what is gynocentrism? Look it up in the dictionary. It's when the female perspective and point of view is the center. So that's why the female power fantasy, the romantic comedy, is promoted in society, whereas the male power fantasy, pornography, is banned, it's shamed, it's made fun of, you're called a loser, all this other stuff like that, because it's gynocentrism. So and the thing is, gynocentrism hurts everyone. Women are miserable. Women, like, there were all these articles about women who, they followed Sex in the City as like their Bible, and they ruined their life. Now they're miserable in their 40s, and they can't find a man, and no one calls them, and they're old, and their eggs are dried up, and they'll never have children. Yep. So gynocentrism doesn't really help these women. It's like they're spoiled children. When you spoil a child, yeah, they're happy in the moment, but then when they grow up to be useless pieces of shit, they hate you and they resent you for basically not teaching them how to be productive adults. So the solution is to basically take control, stop giving in to these spoiled kids for their own good. Everyone will be happier.